goes to the point of, me saying that, if we're going to build it, we should build it right. And also, if we're going to build it, in a project like this, it's been needed for a long time, especially, I can't speak to the industrial area all that much just because, I don't hang out there all that much. But the parts in which I drive all the time, it's been needed for quite a long time. And so I'm glad it's happening, but I would hope that it happens and gets done this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. And I agree that we should be and are looking at our policy regarding grade separated trails that also have a pedestrian component. So I think that staff is aware of that and will be working through those issues. So thanks for raising them and continually raising them well. And I think, as you know, and I know that this is a project that is to eventually join projects over on the east side and connect the two communities with a facility that we don't have currently, but would be very important as an east-west connector, a backbone, if you will, for all our north-south routes, which many are given the orientation of the city. So thank you for your commentary, and I recognize it well. And then also just a quick sort of commentary on the industrial uses or contemplated conversions. Yes, we do have the River First Plan. It's an official plan of the City of Minneapolis and the Park and Rec, and recognized by the Metropolitan Council. So it's a real plan, and there's significant activity implementing that plan. When you're doing something that's probably 30 to 50 years in the making, big individual projects still look small in comparison to the overall goal, but they are underway. However, not all areas will be converted from their current land use, and we don't know what configuration. And there are other parts of the cities that will never have land use different than industrial, yet are contemplated to be multimodal. So I think if we adopted the notion that industrial precludes bike trails, that would mean that there's several communities that would never, ever see a bike trail of significance that connected to other routes. So just a consideration, though safety is foremost, and I think those points are made. Perhaps staff could, in aggregate, respond to some of the residential and business testimony that we had today, to the extent you find relevant answers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Jeff Handeland with Transportation Engineering Design. The purpose of the project is the pavement condition, and the pavement condition for the reconstruction area is too poor for renovation and needs to be reconstructed. Now that we're reconstructing those pavements is the time to engage the community, consult the citywide plans, the neighborhood plans. We follow that process, which resulted in the layout that was approved by City Council about a year ago. That layout defined the curb lines, so we're still very willing to take a look at the detailed plan as far as driveway sizes and locations with, for example, St. Anne's, and, for example, the industrial businesses on the east end, to make sure that our design is compatible with their commercial and business operations. I think I concur that, designing the separate bike path and sidewalks is going to be safest for all modes, because most cyclists and pedestrians will choose to use those instead of walking the street. The wider boulevards will provide storage for snow, and as far as the duration of the project, we are structuring the contract documents to encourage completion in as short of time frame as possible. However, we do want to make sure we stage the project properly up front so that no segment is left half finished for winter suspension.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much. I have one small question. Somebody raised the terminus when it reaches the east side by the river there, and the bike path kind of ends there. And I think that is an important thing for us to be thinking about. But the point is, this whole area, I believe, is going to be redeveloped soon, and there's going to be connections, and we kind of have to wait on that connection until that redevelopment happens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon. Yes, through Public Works, consulting the neighborhood plans and the community meetings, the connection and improved access to the river was important, and we saw that is coming, so we designed the facility, appropriately with separated facilities, and so I think that will be safer because that's where bicyclists will be where truckers and other vehicles expect them to be instead of these cut through routes that they're apparently using now. So that being said, I will also work with the businesses to make sure we maintain access during construction and size their driveways appropriately so that their trucks can turn out. I have to design the project that way while they're still operating there.
And so when I was looking at the layout design, it looked like when it reached the end of the bike of the project, there still wasn't a clearly defined way that bikes should get back to the river trail. So I guess that's what I'm referring to. And I think we should start thinking and planning on, well, what is the short-term solution then before all this other stuff happens? So we that maybe work with the private current landowners. I'm not sure what to do, but that's just a little part that I just wanted to call out, that I say that I think, we'll probably have to work with that and somehow figure out what we want bikes to do, and so they understand where to go if they want to go north or south along the river. Does that make sense? And I was just looking at the layout, so I'd just call attention to that. I also just wanted to, though, highlight what an incredible piece of infrastructure this will be and the connections that it makes from the river to Fairview Park all the way to Theodore Wirth. I'm very excited about this, and I try to celebrate all the great projects in my colleagues' ward, but every so often I'm envious, and this is one that I think I'm envious of. And it's probably long overdue that something like this gets put in there, but I'm just very supportive and glad to see this coming forward.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I think the notion that the project has its main componentry, but there might be some issues how they dovetail with the industrial area, issues have been raised, and of course, short-term or even mid-term sort of remedy to a dead end that could be confusing and potentially dangerous to people. I think that is due extra work, and I think you're receptive to that commentary. If I understand correctly. Any further conversation? Seeing none, I will move approval as stated by staff, giving fair note to the testimony today and some of the issues raised. Any further conversation? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. Thank you very much. We have now item 3, also a public hearing. In this regard, 6th Avenue North from 5th Street North to 200 feet north of Washington Avenue North paving project approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jeff Hanlon with Transportation Engineering Design. 6th Avenue North is scheduled for reconstruction in 2016 between 5th Street North and the dead end north of Washington Avenue. Public Works designed the project considering input from the public, including the Heritage Street Plan and public meetings held on October 6, 2014 and January 21st, 2015. Public Works also reached out to businesses specifically and designed the street to improve pedestrian facilities while ensuring that the street will also still work for the adjacent businesses, including preservation of the existing loading docks and the associated trucking the businesses depend on. City Council approved the project layout on March 20th, 2015, and the detailed design is now complete. Public Works held another public meeting last Tuesday to inform the property owners about the assessments method and process, and we plan to hold a 4th public meeting prior to the start of construction to give some information about what to expect for access and trying to limit disruption during construction. Today, Public Works is asking City Council to pass resolutions ordering the work to proceed, adopting the special assessments, authorizing sale of the assessment bonds, and authorizing abandonment and removal of any areaways in conflict with the project. The intent of this project is to work around the known areaways and not impact the existing loading docks. I'll stay nearby in case there are any questions.
Any questions for the presentation? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Has anyone signed in? No one signed in. Does anyone wish to come forward to give testimony? Anyone wish to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will move approval. As stated by staff, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That item carries. Oh, Councilmember Fry, you can have the floor.
Well, I was told that when you get to yes, you should shut up. So thank you for the vote. Staff has obviously done a whole lot of work on this project, and it's an entire revamp of 6th Avenue, which up to this point has been a street filled with not just little potholes, but royal sinkholes. And the revamp, including pavers and bringing the street back to its original condition, is very much needed. So thank you for the support.
Thank you for that, Council Member. All right, so we move along, and we have item 4, which is the Blue Line Light Rail extension, municipal consent before us. Director Cockey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Flum, our transportation planner, will start the presentation now, and then we'll hand over the presentation to the Blue Line Extension staff.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and council members. We have a very large project to talk about today. This is the Blue Line Extension, which will serve a number of communities, including Minneapolis. I'm going to be brief. I'm going to turn it over to Dan Solar from the Botno Project, or the Blue Line Extension Project Office. For many years, this was called the Botno Line. So for those of us who have worked on this for a very long time, it's hard to not say Botno when we're talking about Blue Line, but they're one and the same. Want to first let folks know that the city has been involved for a very long time in this project, and the last time we came to you with respect to this project, we had a number of concerns and comments with respect to the draft environmental impact statement. That process came and went, and the Metropolitan Council, who manages this project, set up something called an issue resolution team, which consisted of folks from Met Council, their consultants, MnDOT, Hennepin County, and Minneapolis staff. So for the last year and a half or so, we've been participating in weekly issue resolution team meetings to address a number of the concerns that we brought forth. And most of those concerns have been satisfied. There are still some outstanding things. You see in your staff letter or staff report that there are a few remaining items with respect to municipal consent. But I want to, before talking about municipal consent, I want to thank the folks who served on that committee on behalf of city staff. Want to recognize Jenny Haker, Rebecca Hughes, Jim Bowles, and Jack Byers for their work on this. I also want to recognize the folks in the community who are here today. There are a number of folks that represented the Business Advisory Committee, the Community Advisory Committee. A lot of folks were participating in station area planning. A lot of people have gone to public meetings, and so that has helped make this a better project. Kind of getting into why are we here today. Essentially, you're being asked to weigh in on the physical design of the corridor. The Metropolitan Council released plans back in December. Per statute, you've got a certain amount of time. I believe it's March 4th is the deadline to act. You have the ability to approve or disapprove the plans, but based on the work that we have done over the last several months, staff recommend that this essentially municipal consent plan be approved. And with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Solar from the project office. He is the project director for the Blue Line Extension, and he can talk a little more about the details of what is in the municipal consent drawings or the physical design drawings. So we'll pull up the presentation and we'll have Mr. Solar join us. Dan?
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Chair and members of the Transportation Committee today. My name's Dan Solar. I'm the project director from Metro Council on the Blue Line Extension project. Don is correct that we have had and made a tremendous amount of progress on the project since we really took over and began the project at Met Council late in 2014, early in 2015. And I was here about a year ago, maybe not quite, to kind of lay out where we were going and what we were doing with the project. And as Don said, we've moved through a lot of issues and resolved a lot of pieces, most recently with the adoption of a revised scope and a revised cost estimate of the Blue Line Extension Light Rail project at the end of the year. That was adopted by Corridor Management Committee at the end of the year. Mayor Hodges sits in the Corridor Management Committee, Councilmember Johnson as well sit on there. And so we had moved into that then allowed us to release our municipal consent plans, and that's really why we're here today. Now, my presentation isn't real long. This is really meant for the public hearing piece today, but we put a map together so we show the Blue Line Extension project, and I think, as most folks know, it's a 13-mile extension of the original Hiawatha, now Blue Line LRT project from Target Field Station in downtown Minneapolis, runs through Minneapolis, up through the cities of Golden Valley and Robbinsdale and Crystal and Brooklyn Park. 13 miles, 11 new stations, estimated ridership 27,000 riders per day by 2040. And it is a project that we now have in our New Starts process. So I know this committee and the city of Minneapolis understands municipal consent. I was involved with municipal consent on the Green Line, Central Corridor, where I worked for many years. I know you've had maybe even more than one municipal consent opportunity on the Green Line extension, and now the Blue Line extension municipal consent piece. So what are we doing with municipal consent? We're putting in place at about the 15 to 20% design phase of the project. We're putting in place and looking for concurrence with the physical design features of the project. Where's the track going to go? Where are the stations going to go? What roads are being reconstructed? What roads are being impacted? Those elements. Are we going to have an operations and maintenance facility, and where is it going to be? Where are the sidewalks and paths and streets that get rebuilt? Long way to go after this in terms of final design, but that's the purpose of where we are with municipal consent. So just to walk through real quickly where we are now with in the city of Minneapolis with the project, you can see on this exhibit that we come off of Target Field Station, and then while Southwest stays up in the air around and comes down Royalston to the Royalston Station, the Blue Line extension will come down from the Target Field Station and cross the 7th Street intersection at grade. We spent a lot of time with city staff on the at-grade intersection configuration of 7th Street and Bolson Memorial Highway, bike paths along 7th, how we join the turn lanes, keep that in place, and we believe we have a very good design on that piece. We continue along Bolson Memorial Highway over I-94, and then have the reconstruction. We've now identified that we will fully reconstruct the segment of Highway 55 from 94 to about Theodore Wirth Park, where we make the turn onto the Burlington Northern Railroad. That segment was a piece of a great deal of work on our behalf at the project office, the city, the county, Minnesota DOT. That's a trunk highway. It needs to be a roadway that continues to be a trunk highway, but it also needs to be made safer for LRT operating in the middle. So a lot of the folks here in the community that are here to testify today have talked to us a lot about pedestrian access, pedestrian access, pedestrian access, and pedestrian access. Let's make it safe. Let's make sure the signal timing is long enough to get people to the stations. Let's make sure that we utilize traffic signals at non-roadway crossings that are going to access the station platforms. If we're going to have LRT in the middle of Trunk Highway 55, let's make it both a roadway that can move vehicles as needed and is safe. So we're talking about bringing the speed down to 35. That's part of the process. We're talking about reconstructing it, but taking away some of the wider shoulders that are out there, and especially on that inside, and making it a safe crossing roadway. So that's a piece of the design. We have 2 stations in the center of Highway 55 in Minneapolis. One that you see here, right between Van Wyck and Bryant. That's the first station, and then the second station just immediately on the east side of Penn. At Penn.
We have some questions from council members. Councilmember Gordon, followed by Councilmember Bender.
So obviously, this section is one of great concern for Minneapolis because it's in Minneapolis. And I appreciate all the discussion about access and pedestrians getting there. I'm curious if when our municipal consent today doesn't mean that we've signed off, that you've solved everything, we're not going to do any more pedestrian enhancements along the way, or does it? Are we also approving then the curb bump outs and the number of lanes on there with this consent? Does that make sense to you?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon, it doesn't necessarily reflect the fact that, are we going to have a signal here? Is this the radius? Should a sidewalk be? But it does, in fact, approve the fact that we're moving forward with reconstructing the roadway, that it still would be reconstructed as a 6-lane roadway with left turn lanes at the, I want to say the 8 signalized locations that are between 94 and where we turn off. That it also, though, be a roadway that gets reduced in speed to 35, that the lanes get narrower than they are today, and that we reconstruct the sidewalks and the boulevards to put those pieces in place. So the basic physical design is part of the municipal consent. The final design about, do we add another pedestrian crossing somewhere, or do we change the signal timing and all the specifics, that all comes as part of the final design.
Okay, then I'll just ask a couple questions. And you already clarified that the speed limit for the cars as well as the train will be held down to 35 or lower.
That, Chair, Councilmember Gordon, that's correct.
And all the pedestrian crossings will be at grade, so the train, the cars, the pedestrians, and everybody else will be on the same plane. There's no bridges or tunnels or anything like that.
Chair, Councilmember Gordon, that's correct.
Okay. I don't know if there's any other features. I mean, we can see where it looks like there's white marks where you're saying maybe there's going to be some curb extensions there at those crossings, and that will help that. You could call out any other enhancements that you think that are going into there. It still seems to me like it's very wide roads. It's still going to look like there's a big barrier and a big wall, and I'm still concerned about that it's not going to actually help connect the neighborhoods on either side of this, but it's going to seem like it's more challenging and more difficult. So I just want to note that. And I also am curious if our own pedestrian advisory committee reviewed this and weighed in and gave any advice and input. You may not know that, but perhaps our staff knows that and what vetting process it went through there. So that's a little bit.
Sure, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon. We've certainly worked with staff in great detail throughout the project, and I know that city staff has pulled in various different groups as needed, so they very well might have done that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know you still have more to give in your presentation as well, but could you zoom in on one of the sort of typical intersections, maybe Penn Avenue, and just talk us through the cross-section as you're describing the project? As I look at Penn, I think I see seven lanes of traffic plus the train in the middle. And so then I wondered what the crossing distance there is today and what it will be after the train is constructed. It seems to me that it's not changing. And then I have one follow-up question. for those details.
So here, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, is a blow up, kind of okay. It's not great, but it's okay. So there's a couple pieces about the crossing of 55 that we have to take into account when we talk about it. Number one, you are correct that to get from one side of Highway 55 to the other side of Highway 55 in this area does not get shorter, simply because it's a 3-lane road with a left turn lane today. It'll be a 3-lane road with a left turn lane in the future. But it also has LRT in the middle, not the median that's there today, and especially in locations where we've got a platform, a center platform like this, the middle is wider than it is today. The amount of street that a pedestrian is required to cross, where there are vehicles, is smaller, is narrower. So in other words, when you add up what the bituminous, what the street is from one corner to the other, it's less time that a pedestrian is exposed to the street. Now, is that a big deal? Well, sure, it's a big deal that a pedestrian isn't as exposed to vehicles, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the overall crossing is any shorter. Also, with pedestrians or station platforms in the middle, pedestrians are accessing the station platforms as well. So some of the improvements that we've put in place, the sidewalks today along this piece of 55, many of them are right behind the existing curb with no boulevard area whatsoever. The entire piece will have the east-west sidewalks back from the existing road with a 10-foot boulevard, likely with a relocation of a lot of the existing trees that are in the median into those boulevard areas, so we can have that green back in there. That's a piece we've heard a lot from the community. And this whole section is one that we spent a tremendous amount of time with, where we really had to work on balancing how do we continue to provide moving of vehicles versus turning movements into the neighborhood versus pedestrian safety versus where do we put LRT versus how do we keep those functionalities in place. And through our process with the various stakeholders, we believe this is a workable end.
Do you happen to know how many vehicles per day drive through the corridor? And can you talk more about why we need 7 lanes of traffic here?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, I'm not positive on exactly the volumes today. A couple of the reasons why it's in the greater than 30,000 vehicles a day number. So it's a significant number. Highway 55 does a couple of things. It is, as a trunk highway, it serves as a fairly significant east-west corridor in from the western suburbs into downtown Minneapolis. So, well, why does it need to stay? As we worked on it, number one, if it gets narrower, the belief is where does that diverted traffic go? So there was talk of, well, how much traffic in Glenwood handle, and how much traffic will use Penn, and what will happen to Plymouth. And so there was definitely some concerns by the county and by city staff over some of those. Secondly, right now, it's an interesting roadway in that most roadways that are radial like this, you tend to think, well, okay, so it's real heavy inbound in the morning, inbound meaning eastbound into Minneapolis, and really heavy westbound in the PM out of Minneapolis. This section of Highway 55 is busiest eastbound AM and PM. And the reason that is primarily because people do not want to be on 394 to make that turn on the 94. And so they use this segment of 55 as much eastbound in the PM peak as in the morning, where it's also heavy. It's heavier. It was a surprise to me in looking at that, but then in looking at what happens on 394, this becomes a reliever, and so people don't go down there if they want to go 94 west or east. They come up by Lindale and then make the move onto there. So that's some of the reasons why it has to stay, and it needs to stay jurisdictionally as a trunk highway. And MnDOT's analysis is it really needs to stay a 6-lane road. Now, On MnDOT's other side, yeah, we can make it narrower in terms of lane width. We can bring the speed down to 35. We can change the character. We can make it, by adding additional signals, we can make it a better roadway, but it still, by a capacity, needs to be 6.
Just finally, wouldn't we assume that some of the folks that are driving today might take our new, very expensive train?
Chair, Councilmember Bender, of course, I dream at night that will be the case. I mean, but I think we can look at the fact that we are exceeding ridership. We are exceeding ridership on Central Corridor, on Green Line, and I'm not sure 94 is any less busy. And I'm not sure that University Avenue, it's a little bit less busy, but yes, we hope people will. We certainly hope people will, but they won't take it to Plymouth, and they won't take it to the far reaches of Golden Valley because it doesn't go there. Will it help? Yes, it'll provide another alternative. It'll provide another option for people to move around the region and take some people behind cars, but something tells me there's going to be somebody right behind them to fill that spot.
Councilmember Gordon?
Well, just because University Avenue got mentioned, I just wanted to say we definitely took some lanes out there and everything worked out just fine. So maybe more people are using the train or not, or maybe they're on 94. But I do think we've proven that we can put a train down the middle of a big road and take away some of the car space for that road, and it still works. And that's just a comment. I'll let you get on with your next slides. I'm sure I'll have more questions.
Thank you. Any further questions in this area of inquiry? Seeing none, please proceed.
And of course, Chair, 55 is the biggest focus of. So 55, obviously, that segment is the biggest piece in Minneapolis, the biggest function that takes